And the never-ending story of arena conversation in Philadelphia as we get ready to hopefully get some good news. The mayor spoke last night, sharing the latest details on everything with the proposal for the Philadelphia 76ers, the city of Philadelphia, and their new arena plans. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers Podcast with Derrick Bodner, Kyle Neubeck. I'm Devon Givens. Brianna producing, all of you in the chat. We have a few other basketball-related things to get to as the show goes along, but we definitely have to start off with the latest news of the proposal, what some of the more details are there for this new arena plan that they have going for Center City. When we got the message from the mayor, what about a week ago, week and a half ago, where she put the video out talking about how she has laid out the plans, is going to take it to the city council, have them look over it, sign it, and get ready to push this thing even further and get things going, push it forward for this thing to be finalized so they can get things underway to start building on Market Street in Center City. The mayor spoke last night, following up exactly with what she wanted to talk about, which is a little bit more info on what this looks like. Derek, Kyle, myself, Bree will be here to talk about it with you all as we hang out. Some more basketball talk a little bit later with training camp things and a few other conversations. Yes, I see Gene in there jumping already on some of the things that we wanted to get into. But Kyle, we'll start to you. You had a chance to look over the information for the proposal and what it all looks like. What stood out to you from what the mayor spoke in last night?
Well, what you would hope would stand out is the fun stuff, like getting a WNBA team, which we're going to get to at some point. What you have to focus on is the nitty gritty, the top line numbers, some of the downsides. I would say, I'm going to embrace negativity for a moment. And I will say that the thing I was most disappointed by as part of this proposal was that there is only $3 million in public transit support offered as part of this proposal. It's funding this is direct from the document, support, subsidization, and incentivization of SEPTA and PATCO use for arena events. And to me, that sounds insufficient for, as we've talked a lot about building habits, or I would say rebuilding habits, making new ones, to take people going from that South Philly complex where it's bulk of the customers, fans are driving, to get down to that 40% or less number that are driving, to then get all these people on the regional rail, on SEPTA, to only have $3 million going to that sounds insufficient. I think if you're asking me what the city needs from the Sixers the most as part of this whole thing, it's to get their either direct money from them to help fund SEPTA, or they really need to be strong and consistent advocates to get more money from the state, from the city, to reinvigorate SEPTA entirely, right? Like, there have been some things out there recently about potentially losing stops on the Broad Street line, that it won't go as far anymore if SEPTA doesn't get some urgent funding. The Sixers need to become one of SEPTA's biggest advocates for this whole thing to work. So I would start there, as that was one of the things that jumped out to me on the negative side. If we're talking about some of the other pieces that go into this arena or the area surrounding the arena, previously they had said the proposal was going to be 395 housing units connected to or around the arena. Roughly 20 to 25% of that was supposed to be affordable housing as part of their community benefits agreement with Chinatown. As part of what was revealed yesterday, there's now 720 proposed units that a spokesperson told Philly Business Journal will be on top of that prior number. So that is roughly 1,115 housing units added on top of that. Whether that also scales up with the affordable housing, I'm not clear on that yet. That would be great to get an even larger number of affordable housing units in that area of the city, where I know one of Chinatown's big concerns is you have all this new development, rent goes up, people get priced out. There are some important things that are going on there. One of the big pieces of interest from the public, because it's a funny name that is given to it, that there is separate but included separate from the Sixers, but including in this big proposal, Goldenberg has a proposal for a hotel nearby. I believe it's somewhere in the 400 to 600 rooms range. That goes in what has been known as the Disney hole on Market Street, where there was, I don't even know if you remember this, Disney tried to expand into cities in the 90s and build their imprint. They put in a Disney Quest in Chicago that failed. And so that spot that they had earmarked for a Disney Quest in Philadelphia has just been a parking lot and has been referred to as a Disney hole. So that would theoretically turn into, if this arena proposal goes through, that turns into a hotel there. However you put any stock into that, that's up to you. The one interesting thing that made some headlines on social media yesterday, we've talked about that poison pill provision that they had in there to kind of stick it to Comcast. So they really went out of their way to stick it to Comcast if you read the nitty-gritty details of it, because it is so specific. So for anyone who is not caught up on this, it was reported, I want to say a week and a half ago, that there was a provision in this proposal that if future teams were to get public funding, whether that's incentives, tax breaks, whatever it might be, the Sixers would also be able to get access to them. So in theory, the Eagles get $200 million. The Sixers get 200, or have the ability to ask for $200 million. And if they have the ability, they're not going to turn down $200 million. Now, when it actually came out, it really is only directed at Comcast and the Flyers, because it only applies to a 5 to 25,000 seat indoor arena. They specifically left the Eagles, Phillies, and even the Union alone, like left the ability for the Union to move from Chester, build an arena in South Philly or elsewhere in the city, get public funds, and the Sixers get none. It is only essentially if Comcast or a future Flyers owner were to build a competitive indoor arena in the same size bracket. If they get funds, then the Sixers get access to it. So they went well out of their way to say, we're not going to take public funds, but Comcast sure as hell is not getting any as well. So those were some of the big top line items.
Stick it to them.
We could get into, they're not going to pay taxes, but they're going to make payments to the city. That would require me to do a whole lot more homework on, comparing them to what the Flyers are giving or comparing them to other arena deals around the country. Those were the biggest things that jumped out at me so far that we can kind of get a firm handle on.
Well, I mean, look, at this stage, as she spoke last week, the mayor did, and adding on to this, the one thing that we always talked about was how convenient things would be because of SEPTA and the city and the Sixers were on board together, that they were there from the very beginning. And with that news of how much money now will be allocated to it, that is disappointing to hear, just because of the fact that, as you said, they need to make sure that they are the biggest advocate, the Sixers. And in order for this to work, it's not just the people in the city. We've talked so much about the people from outside the city who want to come in here, not have to worry about parking, and want to be able to make sure that there are enough transit there, from whether it's a bus in certain part of the city that they come in from out of the city, and then certainly those regional rails that will come in. So to hear that part is a little disappointing based on what we heard from the very beginning. And you would hope that with the fact that there's going to be years until this is done, that there's still enough time to get that piece fixed, where they maybe adjust that number and they see something a little bit different, and they understand after all of these discussions that will be taken care of, and that won't be part of the discussion going forward. Because, look, a lot of people are already frustrated with it as is, and everything's not going to be perfect. If you're already out on the arena, there are going to be things that you pick at anyway that you don't like. So when you now add to it and bring this part up, that has to be fixed. And however that money goes, they need to get that situated with adding to that SEPTA part.
And one quick note, I don't know if we have brought this up on prior shows as it relates to SEPTA. They, independent of this project, there are already plans in place to replace cars on the Market Frankfurt line. Mm-hmm. So I believe that's in 2029 and 2030. Those start coming in. Notably, that precedes when this arena would open. And so that's already happening. There are, I believe, further proposals in place to, make some upgrades to various stops, stations on both the Market Frankfurt line and the Broad Street line. But a lot of it is dependent on further funding, right? And there was another story this week. It's not really related to this, but there was I can't remember if it was in the Inquirer or elsewhere. There was a state senator in Pennsylvania, I think central Pennsylvania, who went to went to Kensington for the first time and did not realize how many people lived there and did not realize how many resources just one neighborhood needs in Philadelphia, let alone the entire city. And public transit is a big thing. Kensington has become this big, punching bag in the city and elsewhere, right? For a lot of different reasons. Kensington as a neighborhood is bigger than a quarter of the counties in Pennsylvania. And I don't think people wrap their heads around that. Like how many people live there and around there, the type of service they need and continue to need. And so SEPTA is this thing that in Philadelphia exists to, in other places in the state. It's just like, oh, they don't need all that funding. But SEPTA is serving a gigantic amount of people in the city. And so, again, my biggest disappointment with this whole thing is that the Sixers have not taken more of a front foot position on trying to aid SEPTA and upgrading SEPTA and really changing the mentality of people in the city ahead of when this arena comes in. Because you don't want to be in a position as the Sixers, as a fan, where you're just learning how to use the regional rail in 2031 when this opens, right? Like you want by then, it should be like this is a seamless part and a regular part of your life. You want people using that and liking that and embracing that experience, because if you don't do that in the next 7 years, by then it becomes like you might lose customers, you might lose fans. And so I don't really understand their position on this, where it seems hands off, while also knowing, based on those studies, you got to get to 40% and under of your fans driving the games. Like that's a real difficult goal that you have to be proactive about trying to reach in the years ahead. So I know this is a basketball show, but it's turning into the public transit show on my behalf, because it's something that I feel I'm pretty passionate about, and I feel bad about that because I drive more than I probably should as it is.
Well, first of all, it's not just the transit show today. It's been the transit show over the past couple of weeks for how much we've had to discuss this arena thing and then getting into the SEPTA part of it, where to park if you do decide to drive down there. And James Alexander saying in the chat, Devon, people would be better off parking at transportation centers. I mean, some are, and that's the whole point. They park at the transportation center to then travel into the city so they don't have to worry about just that. But if there are going to be less cars, potentially less things allocated towards SEPTA and helping all of that and helping to ease the concerns of the people that are coming from outside the area, then that's something that they need to tighten up a little bit more going forward as they get ready to get this thing going. And you're talking 29, 30 for the new cars, for the L and for the rails overall. Then look, I mean, why? Number one, if there's nothing down there, not a lot of people are going to be doing. So, when your kids start school and you want to get them on, you can't drive them every morning. So you want to, let's get on the L so I can show you how to let's get on public transportation so I can show you how to do it. Not many people are going to do that now or even in 2029 ahead of the Sixers arena being built. They're just going to do it and try it out when there's actually a game to go down there for. And then if they see the chaos, if they see the frustration, that's going to then maybe pull them back up saying, you know what, dealing with all this hassle, that's not for me. I'm not going to do it. So they might lose that customer of doing that. If they do try to drive later on and it's still chaotic because it's brand new and trying to figure out how to navigate through all of that traffic down there, that's part two. And strike three, most people are out. But you can get so frustrated from the transit part not working out for you, the driving into the traffic not working for you, that, you know what, I'm not even giving it a third opportunity. I'm just going to watch it on my television and then that's it. You even lost a customer coming down here. So those are things that you would hope are some part of some discussions that they will try to get ironed out and mapped out before we even get there.
Yeah, and I'm just a little surprised there hasn't been a little more focus in terms of studies or bringing this front and center of how they're going to solve this problem. It seems like a lot of it has been economic benefits. You get that. Of course, that is a big key of any proposal. A lot of it has been displacement and impact on the community. It does seem like the transit aspect has been a little bit overlooked, and just some concrete details of, all right, these are the upgrades we need. This is how we're going to get the funding for it. Didn't seem like it was, I haven't had a chance to completely read this as of yet, but it didn't seem like it was completely addressed there. And it's like, well, at some point that has to be addressed because it is a huge aspect of this working. And it's something that, to Kyle's point, I think behavior has to be changed leading up to it, not just in 2031, but well in advance of that. And it is no small thing.
And so that point that James, I believe, made about, driving to these transportation centers. Honestly, I did that quite a bit growing up, like going to Phillies games, Eagles games. We drive to Fern Rock, park there, and we're taking the Broad Street line down to the game. Like that was a normal part of my experience. And frankly, it's part of why I am more of an advocate for something like SEPTA, because I think there's this perception of like, it's really scary to get on. Like if you're a suburbanite, someone who doesn't live close to this, it's like the whole idea of getting on a train is this really daunting thing. It's like, no, man, like these people are generally helpful. I think the regional rail especially is well run. Now they don't have enough trains, right? And that's a huge thing that I think needs to be changed as part of, this whole spiel I've been given on the show today. But by and large, it works pretty well, right? And we have a large, it doesn't feel like it because we're so close to New York, and New York's subway system is just insane. It's like pretty much one of a kind in the country.
Yeah.
But Philadelphia, among the cities in America, has one of the biggest transit systems, and people just don't use it for various reasons. So I would say I would challenge people who watch this show, maybe skeptics of the downtown arena for their various reasons. If you don't take public transit to games in general, I would tell you, if you're going to a couple of games this year, even just one of them, try doing it. Like go through that experience, because frankly, in most cases, the more people use public transit in cities, the more investment they're going to get, the better your experience will be on several levels. It'll be safer, it'll be cleaner, it'll be brighter. But people have to use it. That's part of why SEPTA is in jeopardy with, remote work and all these other things. Less people get on it, so they get less funding, and then it just snowballs down the hill. So this is the Kyle Neubeck SEPTA episode, I guess. But
no, but I mean, to your point, like we used to do the same thing. Park at Fern Rock, take the Broad Street line all the way down when my dad had a 17 game plan way back when. And then I moved into the city for college, got a job, spent about a month driving 76 and said, forget this, started taking the regional rail. One of the big drawbacks is like it runs once an hour. So you can either, like if you're on the wrong end of a window, you can either show up to something an hour early, or you can risk being late. And it's like more trains, I think, will get more people to use it, but more people need to use it for them to devote more trains to it.
It's
kind of a chicken and egg thing. Yeah.
Catch-22, yeah.
People are used to habits, though. They like their habits of how they go to games. Leaving the sports complex is going to be totally different than going downtown. So they don't want that. They have their habits of how they get to the games. They're already against going to the Center City in the first place, so they're certainly going to scoff at this a little bit with it. But on the other side, SEPTA needs some help to make sure that this gets done. If the Sixers and the city want to make sure that this does in fact happen, they're going to have to go a little bit deeper into the pockets and making sure that they have the funds necessary to do so. Talk a little bit more about this whole thing. On the other side, we'll get to some conversation about the Sixers players, some actual basketball conversation. We'll get to that a little bit later. Imagine that. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Gene just said this was the transportation YouTube show here. As Kyle just broke it down.
We will talk basketball, I promise.
On the Neubeck Hour, getting into the transportation, but we'll get into some basketball here shortly. But first, we do continue with the arena right here on the PHLY Sixers Podcast. And as we look ahead to basketball, things getting underway, we have a big game tonight. It's a big game in terms of Philadelphia football overall. You wish that they would tie this game because the two rivals that you hate, Dallas and New York, facing off for Thursday night game tonight, and the only place for you to go outside of watching it placing your wagers and your bets is Bet365. Never ordinary. 90 million users worldwide use Bet365, myself being one of them. I know Brianna does as well when she gets ready for these football games, the guys as well. And Bet365 has live streaming on their app. 780,000 people uses events a year. And with that, as you go in there to make your wager, especially for the live in-game betting overall, you do so. The game is right there in the top right-hand corner, live in action. So as you're getting ready, you need to be fast because those plays happen pretty quickly. Oh, I'm going to wager on this. Bang. Well, the play just happened. Odds just changed. So you have to be quick, but they do have it right there for you to make things easier. Early payout offers across not just Major League Baseball and the NHL, NBA, also NFL as it happens. Pioneered live game betting, in-game betting. That is Bet365. They're very, very good at it, as I just outlined everything for you with the screen, having the game in the moment. And today, Bet365 offers the widest range of games and markets available for live in-game betting across 78 sports. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Use the code PHLY365 to sign up. Deposit $10, place a bet for $5, and you get that $200 in bonus bets. There will be a time limit on your use of those bonus bets, but you get it after wagering that $5. Bonus bets can be used on the spreads, totals, player props, futures, and more. Make sure you do so right here at Bet365. And again, for a Thursday night game here in the National Football League, it's never ordinary. See yourself with a Thursday night touchdown offer. See for yourself. Place qualifying parlay bets totaling $20 or more on tonight's game and get bonus bets for every touchdown. All you have to do is download the app, use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download Bet365 app. Use code again, PHLY365. Sign up. Get $200 in bonus bets with your bet of $5. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 plus and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, you can call or text 1-800-GAMBLER.
We also make sure we tell you about TrueMark Financial. TrueMark Financial has a rewards Visa credit card. Earn rewards for each purchase using TrueMark Financial Rewards Visa credit card and redeem them for travel and retail gift cards. Build credit through timely payments and low credit utilization. Enjoy fraud protection with features like zero liability. Also want to make sure we tell you about savings options with TrueMark Financial. They have a traditional savings account, which is a basic savings account, offering a place to deposit funds, earn interest, and withdraw money as needed. There's also a money market account, which combines features of savings and checking accounts, offering higher interest rates and limited check writing capabilities, easy access to your money when you need it. Then finally, there is a certificate, which is a fixed-term deposit account with a predetermined interest rate and maturity date, offering higher interest rates for locking in funds for a specific period. TrueMark Financial is federally insured by the NCUA as an equal opportunity lender. For more information, visit truemark.com/PHLY.
So I said the Dallas and New York to tie the game tonight because we all hate them. And Gene says, no, I want them both to lose. I don't know how that happens.
Might be tough to
You
pull
root
that
for the
one off.
meteor. That's what I always say.
That's why I said just simply give us a tie, maybe a 0-0 tie. And they both look terrible and their fan bases can panic even more. And that's where we'll go.
It's like in the last Batman trilogy when they the Bane one when they blew up the stadium.
Oh yeah.
Spoilers. Jeez.
Oh.
No, just
like a 12-year-old. I think
we're past especially a movie of that stature, right? Like I think I tend to, if they're smaller movies or
it's
like
also not particularly relevant to the plot. It's just the opening sequence.
Right. I don't know if you guys feel this way about Cowboys and Giants. There was definitely a long period of my life where I hated the Giants more than the Cowboys.
I still hate the Giants more than the Cowboys.
And that's because of, I think, when I grew up, right? Like I was young when the Cowboys won their last Super Bowl. Most of my childhood was, haha, LOL Cowboys. Like they were the prestigious team that just lost all the time. Whereas the Giants won multiple Super Bowls. And I was like, when I was in college, I had to deal with all these kids from Jersey who are Giants fans, and the proximity of like dealing with them all the time. You see the odd Cowboys fan here and there, right? But they're not super common. When you're around people all the time who are Giants fans and the team is winning, especially with that bozo Eli Manning. Who, like, I don't know how people are trying to argue. I get he beat Tom Brady twice, right? And
hey, in the big spot.
You can't take the Super Bowls away from him. But come on, we're not putting him in the Hall of Fame.
Yes. You have to with 2 Super Bowls.
Oh, stop it.
You have to with 2 Super Bowls.
Anyway, so I hated the Giants more than the Cowboys for a long time.
Hey, we may argue about the Eli part.
Now they're probably close, I
would
say.
It never changed for me because I saw both the good Cowboys, to your point, and then the good Giants. The Giants were always, and I think it's more because of the proximity, Cal, because sorry, folks, don't like New York all that much. and it goes to their teams, obviously, because of the rivalry part, which stinks because of Mikhail now being with the Knicks. But it was always the Giants for me. Always.
See, it was always the Cowboys for me. And I only caught the tail end of, the Cowboys Super Bowl run. So it's not really even so much watching them. It's, I think, probably as much because of my dad, who hated Jimmy Johnson with a white-hot intensity. And he just beat that into me, that F Dallas. So it's always been Dallas.
One of my dad's favorite party tricks when I was really young was telling me to go say to his friends, my 2 teams I root for every week.
Yeah.
The Eagles and whoever's playing the Cowboys. Yeah. And they would all be like, they're clapping like seals, like, yeah, like just like loving it. To that generation of, Eagles fan, the Cowboys represent everything that's bad and wrong. With they're the glitz and glam team, and we're from the blue collar Philadelphia. Like it's Buddy Ryan. We're trying to take your heads off type of defense. So I get it, but the Giants, because they were more successful and the proximity thing.
Also,
I hated them at least as much, if not more.
When we say the Giants were more successful, it's not like they've been like outside of those 2 Super Bowl runs, they've been pretty mediocre as well for the most part. So they just haven't quite caught my ire quite as much.
Yeah. All right.
Dallas was just more annoying.
Is it the fans or is it Dallas?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the fan base always comes into play.
And it always does. And the example I always give, I don't have anything against Tim Tebow. I can't stand the people who loved Tim Tebow. Even before he made it to the NFL, all those people, and when he was at Florida and he gave that stupid speech, you'll never see somebody work harder. Like, dude, get this sanctimonious nonsense out of my face. And all these people are just eating it up. Like, come on, man. So it's always the fan base that makes me more mad than the player or the team. I would say that.
Gene says he's rooting for that meteor.
There you go, Eugene. You and me, buddy. Haley's Comet coming into the...
Hey, it's the early part of the season, so I'll be tuned in tonight, man. One of the interesting things that Kyle brought up and Gene talked about a little bit earlier in the chat, of the positive side of, not just because we like the idea of the arena and getting to the arena and all that stuff, is we've been talking for years about why do the Philadelphia 76ers organization, or why are they just simply not a part of the WNBA? And we did finally get that, where you heard Cherelle Parker, Mayor Cherelle Parker, tentatively at least say that she has been talking about it for a couple of years when she's had meetings or just running into people and saying, hey, we need to maybe get involved in this. And that's one of the things that was brought up, Derek, and we've talked about this for a long time, and certainly we've talked about it here over the last couple of weeks when we've discussed the arena. How could they not have one? And at least it was good to hear it from an actual official. Mentioned, not an NBA official, not anybody from the Sixers organization saying, yeah, bring it in, but finally hearing it at least as a possibility.
No, that would be, it's a shame that we're sitting here talking about traffic and we're talking about like tax subsidies and all this stuff. It would be great if we could just sit here and say there's movement. I don't even want to say movement. There's talk of a potential WNBA team coming to Philadelphia, and there's interest, it seems like, all around. That would be huge. And that would be one of the things, like if you're looking to buy goodwill, this would be a great way for Josh Harris and the Sixers to buy a good bit of goodwill. Because quite frankly, I think once we start getting in the nuts and bolts of this and nitty gritty, there's going to be some people questioning a lot of aspects of this deal. This would be a great way to get fans on his side. And it just needs to happen. Like the sport, interest in the sport is growing at such a rapid rate. You should be looking to fuel that with your billions of dollars.
If you could give me a reason to pay even less attention to baseball in the summer.
This is why I'm glad I put you the other day.
I would get down on my knees and thank the good Lord above that I can just ignore the sport entirely during the summer, stay inside, say screw all you bozos with your
Turn
hot
off his
dogs
mic.
and your
cut right
peanuts
now.
and your Cracker Jack. You can take them and throw it in the trash. No, I'm just kidding. No, it'd obviously be great. You get like what? I think 20 home games a year, right? So
hopefully playoffs.
Hopefully the playoffs as well. It would be nice to have that as just like it's just another thing to do. It's good for frankly, it's a different base, right? Like there are a lot of just pure basketball fans, but there would be people who would come out to WNBA games that frankly don't care about the Sixers.
Absolutely.
It's just, and you know, in the same way that local basketball players get inspired by a Maxey and Embiid, potentially a Paul George, whoever. If you bring another team, that's just another group of people who can be inspired by, doesn't necessarily have to be the next Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese or any of these, like the new vanguard of the WNBA, but it's a chance for them to feel a local connection to that, right? And I always think, and this is just my personal experience, right? You can root for teams from afar, and I'm passionate about, you guys see me wear my Liverpool hat on the show all the time, and I have a connection there. I've actually been there, and that's part of why I'm so into it the way that I am. But if you have a local team that you can go and like, you can see them all the time. You can see them play on your local TV station. You can see them out at community events like that. That just means more to you. It feels more personal. It's why I believe so much in things like the local sports coverage that we do. You get a WNBA team, you continue building the basketball culture here. And I think that helps reinvigorate some other communities, right? Like the Big Five, like add some more energy back into that. Like the
City
more
Six.
that basketball becomes
City Six.
The Big Five. I'll never call it the City Six. Sorry. The more energy goes into basketball in general, the more it lifts up the institutions that already exist. Things like the Rumpf that we talked about and highlighted on this show. So I just think there are so many benefits to potentially making basketball a year-round focal point in Philadelphia that would really excite me if they're able to get that done. And they should get it done. Like there's no reason a city of this size with as many people are interested and passionate about basketball should not have a WNBA
Simply because
team.
too, when you talk about the main cities of where they're always bunched up together, it's New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Boston, Philadelphia. Boston and Philadelphia. I mean, Connecticut is Boston. Where's Philadelphia's? New York has theirs. Same thing for Los Angeles, and the same for Chicago. Philadelphia is left out. They need to be in the mix. And Gene said earlier, Caitlin Clark, Well, Caitlin Clark, guess what? You know what? If this city and organization was available when she left Iowa and was able to be drafted first overall, is there a city where she would have fit best with all the discourse going around her, and whether it's this fan base fighting with her fans and all of that, and she's a part of Philadelphia.
If she's one of ours, it's
man,
you better put the fists up.
Man, it would have been perfect. But even with Juju Watkins in a couple of years, once she leaves USC, and there will certainly be more stars that follow them, to your point of the eyes being there and the young ladies wanting to get to that level of where they are. Juju Watkins in a couple of years, Paige Beckers next year. Hopefully AZ Fudd is healthy when she gets back to Connecticut and she's able to get drafted. There are so many of these young ladies that play basketball so well. Yeah, Philadelphia would have been perfect for any of them. And there will be someone who was in our chat that day that said that their people has a young lady. She plays really well.
I'm blanking on one of their friends or their daughter.
Yep.
Yeah.
So someone will be there, and hopefully there's a team here in Philadelphia where in 2031, hopefully before that, 2031, we'll get a WNBA team here in town. So should be fun.
Should be fun, but this is another one where we're gonna have to follow up because it's one thing to say that, it's another thing to follow through with it.
Talk is cheap, and I think I want to say, Devon, you might remember this more than I am, so correct me if I'm wrong. I believe the WNBA has said ideally they would like to have separate owners. They don't necessarily want the NBA and WNBA teams to be run by the same people. They want WNBA owners who are their full attention is on their team. And, to add on to that, Sixers owners not only own the Sixers,
Sure.
As everybody here knows, they own the Devils and the Commanders. And so there's even maybe more of an argument that somebody else should get in there and be part of that. But no, we'll have to wait and see on all that.
JoJo's second mama with a super chat before we wrap up this conversation. Perfect timing. Get the WNBA team and then lay that money down for Dawn Staley.
That's absolutely right. JoJo's second mama. Could not agree more. Blank check for Dawn Staley to come home. And look, I know she's built a powerhouse program.
She did it before. She was playing and coaching at the same time.
And I know that like it'll be hard to leave a place where she's set up for not just royalty, current, but future success. She's gotten the resources. She's building like at least one of but probably the program in women's college basketball right now. But come on, the allure of coming home and building from scratch, this new thing, could be an even bigger local hero than you are. Come on home, Dawn. We're waiting for you. And we're waiting for the team, but we're waiting for you especially.
Some great local players right now in the WNBA. Anyway, Kalia Copper, and we talk about Natasha Cloud, all that, Dawn Staley, of course. And to wrap it up, Tyler says, is the WNBA looking to expand? Well, just last week they announced Portland getting a team, Tyler. So
it's the 15th team, right?
Yep. So if they're looking to keep going, right here in Philadelphia. We come back. We talk some Sixers basketball here on the PHLY Sixers Podcast.
Can you believe it?
Oh, I can. We'll come back and we'll get into it right after this little update here for you about some of our friends here on the PHLY Sixers Podcast. Tell you about our good friends from the hair restoration side of things with Dr. Glatt.
This is the part of the show where I take my hat off?
I already have mine off, so you're all good. Even though I did just come from the barbershop, we'll talk about something me and my buddy Stu were talking about in the barbershop. But that being said, as we look at Glatt hair restoration, are you ready to change your hair? Are you ready to change your look, change your life? Well, it's time to take your life back by restoring your hair. And if you are, the place to go for that is Glatt Hair Restoration, now by Morgenstern Medical, established by the late Dr. Paul Glatt. Restoration is now under the direction of renowned plastic surgeon Dr. Ken Morgenstern, thanks to the remarkable bond that spanned many years as colleagues and friends with Dr. Morgenstern and Dr. Glatt. And if you're familiar with Dr. Glatt, same peerless approach to care, same expert team, same unmatched Glatt system that was there before, the same state-of-the-art location as well with the same stellar results. Same peerless approach. As I just mentioned, Glatt Hair can help during all stages of hair loss while leading with the leading-edge treatments for prevention and restoration, including laser light therapy, non-invasive TED treatments, vitamin supplementation, topical oral medications, PRP and stem cell restoration as well, hair restoration surgery. This is a place with Dr. Glatt that I've heard for many years from our colleague here, from John Marks, who has talked about it, who is someone who has been with Dr. Glatt for many, many years discussing this very thing. And if you check out John from 8 to 9 every day, Monday through Friday here at PHLY, I'm sure he'll be talking about Dr. Glatt, the relationship, certainly here now with Dr. Morgenstern and the medical care there from Morgenstern Medical. Each patient receives a complimentary one-on-one consultation to pinpoint the best course of treatment for you so you can feel comfortable in discussing what's needed and what's best for you for your specific lifestyle that you want to move forward with. Bald is now optional, as we know, but if you want to improve how you look and keeping that hair and how you feel about yourself, Glatt Hair has the right treatment for you. Regain your confidence. Visit glatthairmctr.com or call 610-980-4000 to get started.
And guys, I have to tell you about a longtime friend of ours, Game Time, who we have plenty of personal experience with together and separately. They have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And believe me, I have searched through thousands of tickets in the past for events I really want to go to. But when we were out in Las Vegas, I'm trying to convince these guys to go see Dead & Company at the Sphere. You guys have seen the tie-dye shirt. You've seen Devon's hat that he wore on the show this week. We had such a good time.
Yeah.
We went on Game Time and looked for tickets, and it was a really straightforward process, right? You can see the price right away. You click on that price on the app, the little ticker on there, and then you can see the seat view. You see where you're at in the arena. This is what it's going to look like when I'm there, whether it's a concert, whether it's a game, whatever it might be. And you always know that you're getting the best possible price. They have tiers of deals. They even have things called super deals now. That's a level that I didn't even know you could get to as you're trying to get last minute tickets for an event. But Game Time was super helpful for us. They show you all in pricing. So you can go in and after taxes, after everything else, some people try to hide that until right before checkout. With Game Time, you can see that right away. And that's a feature that I value a lot because I don't want to be, some of these other companies, you get to the end, you think you got a deal, and then turns out there's no deal at all. So I want you guys to check out Game Time for me and for us. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code PHLY for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
Seth said me going to the Dead and Company show is one of the most heroic things they've ever seen.
And guess who was the first person to be like, man, I'm glad we did this. Devon was.
The Sphere was dope. And Dead and Company being there. And we were also looking at John Mayer's watches from afar because you could see on the screen was so good. You can be like, oh, look at that watch that John Mayer has. And the show was great.
Big watch guy.
The optics were fantastic. I knew about 2 or 3 songs of all the songs.
And they were covers. Yeah,
they were covers of Bob Dylan and the Beatles.
Yeah. So there you go, Seth. Took one for the team to hang out with my brothers here. We were actually looking last week at something, but we won't be here because we'll be at training camp.
Oh, poor us.
Yeah, poor us. We were looking on the Game Time.
Can't go to an event because we'll be in the Bahamas. Oh, no. Oh, no.
And I don't know if we're looking for any shows out in the Bahamas because we're going to be hopefully enjoying
the show
that
is
weather.
The beach.
Exactly.
That's my show.
Make sure you check us out also here on Roku every day as we are part of the Roku channel. Search PHLY on the Roku search app to find our channel, and you can check in for our live shows as we start from 8 a.m. with John Marks. And then following our final show, whether it's a post-game show at night for whatever game is happening that particular night, you'll catch our shows in rotation as the day goes along on the Roku channel. Search for PHLY.
I was trying to get it queued up, the picture of you in front of the Sphere and your tie-dye that we did not believe you had the actual tie-dye.
I was ready to go, folks. I was ready to go.
Again, the real shocker was that he packed it before we knew we were going to see the Dead, and it was one of the 10 things he brought with him. It blew my mind.
Just incredible planning. Incredible.
See, I can see forward. You know what I can see forward? Conversations during the season about, are the Sixers wings good enough? Are they good enough? We talk about Paul George, Kelly Oubre, Caleb Martin, and the depth at the wing spot. We also speak about some of the other wing depth and how good things are with not just the Eastern Conference, but the Western Conference. We spoke about yesterday OKC, how good they are with their wings from defensively specifically. Alex Caruso now teaming up with Lou Dort. But that also takes some of the pressure away from Jalen Williams having to step down defensively just a little bit because who is he going to be out there on the floor with? So he doesn't have to really get that one guy, except for when you're worried about the switching and they're hunting certain players. But the wing depth overall, Kyle, when we look at these teams and look at where the Sixers are, expanding past the 3 starters that we've been at least putting in the starting lineup of George, Martin, and Oubre, how good do you feel about the wing depth overall with this basketball team once we get to the bench and looking at everyone else?
I feel about as good as you probably could, right? Like, we're believers in Ricky and hoping that he can develop. I would say my main point of concern, and I was talking with a couple of guys who cover the Cavs yesterday, and we were working out some season preview stuff, how the Sixers stack up, all these things. And one thing that dawned on me as I was having the conversation with them, and that I do think is a little bit of a concern going into the year, while the Sixers have the guys to guard the big wings, I do think there's a potential hole in the spot that I think DeAnthony Melton used to occupy, where the guys who can guard ones, but primarily like two guards and the smaller, quicker wings. I don't know that they necessarily have a lot of depth there, right? Like I think probably Kelly could masquerade as that guy, but I do think he's better served on more of the true wings. And so if you're up against, a team like Cleveland, you're playing a Donovan Mitchell type guy, I think they might have some real problems against those types of players.
And Darius Garland.
Yes. And look, I think in that instance, I think Garland and Maxey are just going to probably take turns going at each other. But you don't really have good options for those. It's the bigger guards and the smaller wings who are beating you more with speed and shiftiness and agility. So I have a little bit of concern there. Now, the good thing, it's two sides of the same coin. On the one hand, you have a bunch of guys who are switchable, versatile defenders that you're not really going to ask one of them to be, you're the lockdown guy. You're the Tony Allen of this team. If you just saw he's getting his number retired in Memphis for he was an unbelievable lockdown one-on-one defender. They don't have that guy. So it's good in the sense that you're never relying on one person. On the other hand, I don't know that you look at any of those guys and say, we need to put out a fire. We're putting you on that guy right now. And that's something that it doesn't really matter in the regular season, but in a 7-game series where, let's say you play Boston, and I know people are a little bit down on Jason Tatum right now, but let's just say Jason Tatum gets on a heater.
Not down on Jason Tatum. Did you see the recent quotes
about Jordan?
Yes,
and
I was going to leave that
yeah.
alone. But if Jason Tatum, or if it's Jaylen Brown, whoever it is, if one of those guys gets going, I don't think you have there's no fire extinguisher there, right? You just kind of have to ride it out and hope that one of these guys gets the job done. So that would be my concern. But I would say if you look at the roster and you say, we have 3 legit top 20, top 25 guys on this team, plus a couple of legitimate starter wings and an upside guy in Ricky Council and some other depth, you really can't make many complaints about this team going into the season.
What do you think? You think, especially when we look at New York is mentioned, OKC with the wings that they have, and maybe you can keep going on down the line. Sixers have 3 pretty good starters, and if Ricky does turn into something, then they might be in a really good spot.
Yeah, if we're talking specifically about matching up defensively, because they obviously don't have...
and that's really what it is, Because
they obviously don't have the two-way talent of Boston when they have 2 guys that they can throw out there. But in terms of matching up, I agree with Kyle that my biggest concern are the bigger guards. This is one area where there's a lot of people sort of banking on the fact that Kelly shot 37% from 3 with Embiid on the floor and limited sample size last year. That might be a swing stat to watch this season, a swing skill for Kelly to develop, because if he can stay on the floor and spread the floor around Embiid and be able to play 35, 40 minutes where I'm not nervous about his decision-making or his lack of shooting, he can transform this team defensively. Part of the reason he's such a key is they just don't have any other viable options behind him to really defend those quicker guards. So I think, that's a concern that I share. It's one that we've brought up quite a bit here over the last couple of weeks. It's really outside of your trust in their star players delivering in key moments and injuries. It's probably the biggest concern you have on this squad.
Now, when you mentioned DeAnthony Melton, though, one of the things that we would discuss, and I know it was a big point of concern for you guys, was he's a good defender, but the point of attack stuff, he may be a little bit overrated when it comes to that. So I just wanted to bring that up.
It's tough to balance, right? And I think part of it,
because we're not talking about Herb Jones and
it's tough to balance where DeAnthony off ball was very good, right? Reads the game well, can create turnovers, do all that. I think it just, at times he fell into, he's not quite big enough against those Tatum type guys of the world, right? Like the true wings. But the small, shifty guys, he also could have some trouble with. So it was a kind of a niche where I thought he was best for the on-ball stuff. But it is a real, there are some high-level guys in that mold. And DeAnthony was at least a productive and helpful part of stopping them. So, again, they're in a much better place now than they were last year. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, they lost DeAnthony Melton, who didn't play most of last year. The sky is not falling, certainly. I just think if you look at some specific matchups down the road, there are holes to exploit. I think at the end of the day, though, the reason why you would retain confidence is that those teams tend to be light in the front court, right? If you're a heavy backcourt or a heavy wing team, There are not many of those teams that have guys who can stop Joel Embiid or even slow down Joel Embiid. And frankly, there aren't a lot of teams that are loaded up there. They're going to be able to also slow down both of, or even one of, Paul George and Tyrese Maxey. So you look at it through we on this show cover the Sixers. So everything is through the prism of, okay, where are their holes? Where are their weaknesses? If you flip it around and you say, like the Knicks, we talked about the Knicks a lot this summer. The Knicks have all this depth on the wing. They have probably 9 to 10 like legit playable guys. Their only real center is out for 2.5 months. Like that's a big problem. And they're trying to reintroduce Julius Randle. Like those are huge concerns that they have to sort through and deal with. And in matchups against a team like the Sixers with Joel Embiid, huge problem. If they were fortunate enough to get to the finals, if Mitchell Robinson's all you got against Jokic, like he can do a decent job. But the second that he hits the bench, Jokic is putting Jericho Sims and Precious Achiuwa and all these other guys through the damn stanchion and running up the score. So every team, with the exception of Boston, who really has been able to reach a place where they have their cake and they're eating it too, you're compromising for whatever your vision is. If you got the 2 big wings, probably small in the backcourt, probably small in the front court. It's just, that's the nature of a salary cap league. I'm really excited to see these guys starting next week. It's still like, it has not really dawned on me quite yet. In what is it, 4 days?
Yeah.
Is media day. And then 5 days from now, it'll be practice number 1, baby. New look Sixers.
Should be a good time. And the beauty of it too, with it, even though we're nitpicking here, is the good part of it, even though there is no DeAnthony Melton to lean on like that. Yeah, but once you switch from Paul George, you then switch to Kelly Oubre, who then switches to Caleb Martin. You at least feel good about, you can't just hunt that guy. The one that they're really hunting is Tyrese Maxey, and they're going to try to, like hell, to fight over those screens to make sure that he's not caught in that spot.
But to me, I think that's number 1 trade candidate, in-season trade candidate watch.
Defense.
Even more than, like, I know a lot of people get caught up in the power forward spot. To me, it's big guard who can handle the ball a little bit and shoot is number 1.
Yeah.
I would love a long-term backcourt partner for Tyrese.
Yes. Because it's a little bit of a hard one. Like, you've got to be a little delicate with that one. Like, he's got to be big enough to defend twos. He's got to have a little bit of being able to run an offense. He's obviously got to shoot. It's a tough needle to thread.
I think really it's like you want a classic 2 guard, right? Like you want a guy who doesn't need to have the ball, that can shoot and is also a good first step, get to the basket type guy who's also 6'5", 6'6" with good wingspan. Those are guys that make a lot of money and get drafted very high. Yep. It's like, hey, if you could put Anthony Edwards on this team, sign me up. But unfortunately, Anthony Edwards is a number 1 overall pick, even with a disappointing freshman season at Georgia. And now he costs a hell of a lot of money to go get him.
I said Thompson just because of the type of guard that Curry, of course, I'm not saying Tyrese Maxey is going to reach the levels of it. But look, we're already talking about an all-star guy where you had someone like Klay Thompson to shoot and defend, doesn't put the ball on the floor a lot, but he will crush you and be a 2-way guy. And you can throw him where Curry can go in the corner and find someone else. Yeah, that would have been pretty good. So that's the challenge that maybe trade deadline.
You could have had non-prime Klay Thompson.
Very true.
They chose Paul George over him, and I completely get that.
I was going to say, we're in agreement. Good job, Sixers, on that choice.
Some people with the free agent period wanted to look at this particular guy that I wanted to bring up before we ended the show. And that is after 16 years, even though he was a free agent, some still said, at least last summer specifically, what about Derrick Rose as a end-of-the-bench kind of guy? Well, he's now retiring after 16 seasons. One-time MVP, which we discussed here on the show earlier in the week about him taking one of the MVPs, maybe from LeBron James, Dwight Howard, whatever argument you want to have, he won the MVP. After that injury, though, that season to the Sixers in the playoffs, he was never the same. And remember when he played, got injured, they said he was coming back. He said he wasn't ready to come back. There was now arguments about that. He's not tough enough. He's all of this. He's that. Meanwhile, he's just trying to make sure he was right. Then we get into a whole bunch of other things. 16 years, though, he's a guy who, with the MVP in year 3, I believe it was, changing that franchise to what it was with the help of many others, from Joakim Noah to Luol Deng, Taj Gibson, all that stuff that they had there. They were a really good team, but his career could have been so much better if he was not injured in that particular playoff game. So the question I wanted to ask to my guys, my brothers here, and all of you out there, can you give me 5, Derrick, 5 players of what if the injury didn't take away their best years of basketball from 1990 to now?
Well, I feel like if I go 5, I'm going to end up listing a lot of ones that maybe Kyle, you want to talk about. So I'll start off with a couple of, I don't want to say anonymous ones or people that you want to.
So this, when I said I was bringing up Stu, me and Stu were in the barbershop talking about Derrick Rose. And we were like, let's think of some other ones. So yeah.
I'll start off with Arvydas Sabonis.
He's injuries, a big one.
Well, and people will be like, well, he played until he was 36 or whatever. He didn't come over to the NBA until he was like 31. A big part of that was because he had a lot of injuries while playing over there. And he didn't feel like he was physically able to compete.
Also, the USSR stuff was the much different climate than it is now.
Regardless, his injuries early in his career very much limited his mobility. He could have been an incredible player. I don't think a lot of times when you think of injuries early in your career, because he did play a long career, but it was hampered completely. A little more tragic. Drazen Petrovic, if you remember him, he was a certified bucket with the Nets way back when, ended up dying in a car crash. That's not really an injury, but that was a career cut short that was just devastating at the time. And then the third one I'll go with is Brandon Roy. And the degenerative
He was one I was going to bring up.
It was like he came out, he was incredible. And then 2 years later, he was done at like 26. That was real quick.
I mean, one of the ones I always go to is Greg Oden, right? And I know that the league, maybe not so much at that point, right? It was starting to move away from his type of player, but I will never forget watching that national championship game, Ohio State, Florida, where Florida is loaded. They're about to win back-to-back titles. They do win back-to-back titles. And they have 2 like legit NBA bigs in Joakim Noah and Al Horford, who go on to have great careers. And he just dogged them for 40 minutes. Like put up I think 25 and 10, which in college is like, you're putting in some damn work putting up those numbers.
Yeah.
And to watch that guy just go from that dude to just unable to be an NBA player was extremely sad. Now, I will say, I always try to take it out of everyone's like, well, it was still, you should have taken Kevin Durant and all that. And it's like, yeah, maybe Durant was an incredible player. It's just so sad.
You didn't
watching
see the injuries coming that bad. No.
It's so terrible watching that guy who's got all the talent, looks like the next generational big man, and just have it be taken away from him. And then he's been open about he went through a lot of trials and tribulations off the floor as his body failed him. And so just a very sad story for him. Another one to a lesser extent for me was T-Mac, where he had I believe he had microfracture surgery.
And did he play too long though?
Yes, I think the tail end of his career is less about, but his peak was unbelievable. And once he started to tail off physically, it wasn't quite as dramatic. The one that was real, the real childhood guy for me, and this was less, some of it injuries, some of it off-court stuff. Shawn Kemp was one of my favorite guys to watch when he was young and in Seattle and playing with Gary Payton. And then because of, alcohol abuse off the floor, frankly, his diet and his preparation, that got away from him and his body just started to fail him. He fell off a cliff so quickly. And I wish that we could have gotten full career of Shawn Kemp, because that guy was an absolute marvel to watch at his peak.
Yeah, so I have a few that definitely I want to add to it just before we get out of here. Since, again, me and Stu were talking about this, I was like, I got to ask the guys on the show because this is too good with Derrick Rose retiring and all that. Do want to tell everybody, make sure you sign up for the Die Hard program. Sign up for the Die Hard program where you can get the written content for everything going on right now with the Eagles. The Flyers getting ready to start their season, and certainly with everything getting ready to happen with the Phillies in the postseason, Derrick. Getting ready to happen with the playoffs.
Unlike my
5th.
Esteemed co-host, I will not.
They get it by, Kyle, so you can get ready, man.
Not that great baseball.
Get ready.
I'm on James Harden's ramp to Phillies fandom.
They'll be back for the division series on the 5th, so make sure you read everything from Jim Salisbury. Sign up for the Die Hard program. Watch the PHLY Sixers, PHLY Flyers, PHLY Eagles, Penn State Show, Union, all of that. The written content for the guys here. Once we get the training camp for the Bahamas next week, Sixers get underway. Media Day on Monday. Training camp starts on Tuesday. They'll have all the great written content right there as a diehard member, go check it out. All right, for me, as we were talking about it, so the very first one, speaking about Derrick Rose, and we were ranking him with the 5, and we said, all right, let's just put him at 5. Just to start it off, just put him at 5. Number 1 for me and for Stu was Penny Hardaway. I think it's top 2 for mostly everybody, but for us, and I've known him since we were 14, so we've been watching him since Memphis State, all that, so it was Penny.
Yeah.
Just the stuff that Penny did on the floor at Memphis State. He and Lorenzen Wright just wreaking havoc there for Memphis
and for
State.
Nick Nolte's team and Blue Chips, man.
No doubt, man. No doubt. So Penny was number 1. Grant Hill was number 2, as you guys have talked about. Then we went Brandon Roy number 3 because when you would hear Kobe talk about the toughest guys that he had to play against in that time where Kobe was Kobe, Brandon Roy was one of them. Mm-hmm. And Brandon Roy had two-way ability next to Tyrese Maxey. He could defend.
No, he would have been.
He could score. Yep. He can shoot. Yes. He was athletic. He'll dunk on you. And he was just phenomenal. He was no flaws in his game whatsoever. And even as good as he was at Washington, I didn't know he was going to be that damn good in the NBA.
And at crunch
so quickly.
Time, he was nails. Absolute nails.
So if you could imagine him with Greg Oden and then Damian Lillard coming later, or even with LaMarcus Aldridge in the mix, Brandon Roy was it. The other ones that we threw out there were DeMarcus Cousins, just because when that injury happened with the Pelicans, when he tore his Achilles, that was it.
Oh, he went from a very productive, high-level player to just
that was it. Yeah. I don't know where we put John Wall, because when that injury happened and his knees just kind of went, he was done. That speed was gone, and he was no longer.
I'll give you another one. Amari Stoudemire. That was a real dramatic drop off. Where I mean, even that first season in New York, he was like MVP candidate level,
and he already looked like he was slowing down.
Yeah.
And then the microfracture stuff happened. Yeah. Larry Johnson with the back before he went to New York.
Baby.
Larry Johnson with the back issue. That one was tough, and those were a few of them that we had came up with. Larry Johnson was the man. And we always talk about college basketball, and we talk about the UNLV teams.
Oh, man.
If his back didn't give out on him the way that it did, who knows? Andrew Bynum was another one, Gene, that Stu had brought up that I totally forgot about.
Now, if you expand it past, I saw a few mentions of guys if you expand it past the 90s, right?
Yeah, right.
The one that always comes up is Len Bias, like that very tragic.
And we tried to keep that part out of it. It was more injury than it was. Yeah.
But if you go back even further, one of the biggest ones is Bill Walton, right? Like he was the pinnacle of basketball for a couple years there. They win the title. They beat a team. The Sixers were heavily favored in that finals. They come out the next year. I think they opened the season like 40-10, and they are just rolling. Walton gets hurt and really ended up later in his career as a bench guy on the Celtics.
Talk about the
refinding himself
with the towel.
Yeah,
he was that guy,
being like the 6-man glue guy, all that. But in the interim period, it was just this kind of lost in the wilderness thing for a guy that not only at the NBA level, but is one of the best college players of all time as well. So to lose what could have been one of the great careers in basketball history and still have accomplished as much as he did is great, but it's the difference between being a what could have been and, maybe like an absolute inner circle.
Because a lot of these guys were still so good that they made the Hall of Fame. They still made it. Now, Penny won't make it because there just wasn't enough. Grant Hill will because of the college basketball stuff and what he did in
Team
the
USA
NBA
stuff, too.
Yeah, of course. So he's going to be like Arthur Blank and put himself in the Hall of Fame. I don't know, whatever he's going to do. But so some of those guys still were good enough, though, to continue and become Hall of Famers, still have some all-star appearances and all. Another name that's mentioned that we always talk about, Andrew Toney with the feet and the issue 100%. There. One that he brought up when we were in the barbershop, Baron Davis. Baron Davis injury, man. The explosiveness.
I'll never forget that dunk
in the playoffs.
Oh, dude.
On Andre Karolinko.
Yes.
Just take the fine, man. Just take the fine. Yeah, right.
I love Baron Davis is one of my favorite players as a kid. I just love that, athletic, and not big, right? But he could get up. He had the vertical athleticism and just punch one on people. I loved watching him. I'll never forget, by the way.
How many threes do you think he takes today? Because he was taking 7-8 per game
quite
back
a
then.
bit. Yeah, he's getting them up.
Yeah.
I'll never forget, there was a playoff game when he was on the Hornets. They're playing the Orlando Magic. I was watching it in my friend's dad had a conversion van, and we were at some event. We were like, this is boring. I'm going to go watch playoff basketball. Baron Davis hit a buzzer beater that was out of his hands with like a half a second left. So
this one.
Not close.
Right? Yeah.
And they waved it off. And I'm like, what are you looking at?
The video when we were in Vegas. Doing? You showed it to me in Vegas.
I was like, how the heck did you rule that? So that's burned into my brain. One more I want to throw out there from the pre-90s who he did fall off completely and is a giant what if. Ralph Sampson.
Yeah,
right? Like, one of the all-time college players, comes into the league. He plays in the Twin Towers setup with Hakeem, hits that crazy buzzer beater against the Lakers, like peak Lakers, mid-'80s, to knock them out and set up. They played the Celtics in the finals. I think they lost in 5 games, 6 games, whatever it was. And they look like, oh, man, Houston is like, they're the next team, right? As the Lakers fall off, as the Celtics, are going to split up for various reasons. Houston is the next team, and then Ralph Sampson's body just gave out on him. He was like 7'4", right? And so he's a bit too tall for his own good. They also had other guys that dealt with drug problems and all kinds of other stuff, and that team went off the rails. So I was happy that Hakeem was still able to, at the end of the day, 10 years later or whatever, win those titles. But Ralph Sampson was a real, like, he could have been capital G great and never really had the chance.
Stu checked in on the chat. Look at that. He's listening. Yao Ming.
Houston and their really big guys, man. Just no wonder Daryl had like Chuck Hayes and some of these other guys. Like, we can't take any more risks on the real big guys down
It's all good. It's not a lot of money.
Give me Montrezl Harrell, Chuck Hayes.
Yeah.
Nobody over 6'10".
Because of this, is there one player?
Also, I just want to point out, you've got 2 people that we talked about here with navicular bone injuries, and that was obviously a huge concern for Joel Embiid. He has done an exceptional job coming back from that one that has claimed a couple of careers.
Yeah. Keep knocking, man.
I'm just making sure. If anything goes wrong, you can blame that guy.
Before we get to the roll call, I wanted to ask you guys this one off of this conversation because you went to, Len Bias and Drazen Petrovic and all that, but more just players who you thought were going to be that good, had the opportunity, and were just disappointing. Because when we talk about this, it wasn't an injury, and this is my guy. Every time the Sixers reacquired him.
Oh, I know exactly who you're talking about.
I just wanted him
you
to
don't even have to
lose the weight.
DC.
Yes, man. Yes.
When he was talking about Petrovic, I was like, dude, that jersey version of Derek Coleman was like
the royal blue
the 2010 All-Star.
Man, All-Star. Him and Kenny Anderson. I wanted Derek Coleman to just...
Well, the shame of it is, it seemed like towards the end of his career, he actually, like, it got through to him a little bit, and he started to give a little bit of his shit. But then he had a heart condition that really hurt him and made it tough for him to stay in shape. And it's like, it just felt like if you would have thought like that at 22 instead of at 29, 30,
I wanted Derek Coleman to just rip the league up because of how talented he was, man. I didn't care about the Nets. It was about Derek Coleman. I just wanted to see him just do his thing. And even when he was here in the Sixers uniform, the skill was still there. He was overweight and he didn't care. The realest of the real, because when he started, what was it? Was it the dress code even at that time? And he just said, hey, Larry Brown, he told the story. Blank check. Here you go. Beginning of the season. I'm not doing that. I mean, it wasn't like, take this. Here you go. Because I'm going to get fined. I'm not doing that. So was there one for you? Because Derek Coleman was mine, man. By the way,
DC was honestly the first one that came up.
All right, so that's fair. We're on the
Larry
same page.
Hughes, though, too. I really wanted Larry Hughes to work out. I don't know if I ever believed in Larry Hughes.
It wasn't a Sixers thing. It was just a talent thing.
Yeah, well, in part that I thought it would have been a really fun running mate next to AI. Yeah. I really wanted him to work out.
Yeah,
I think there were various reasons for this. Steve Francis is a big one for me. He came into the league like a house on fire.
That's a great one.
He's in that Baron Davis mold, right? Where he's not the biggest dude, but he had some explosive athleticism and is just punching. I was about to say a word I shouldn't say on here. Punching dunks on people in the NBA. And rookie of the year, he makes 3 straight all-star teams.
And
everything seems to be lining up for him, but he was pretty volatile.
Yeah.
And didn't seem like he ever turned the corner as like he shot well earlier in his career, but was never the 3-point shooter I think he needed to be to go from like where he was at to high level guy, and ended up flaming out pretty quickly. I think he only played about 8 years in the league, 9 years in the league.
Yeah.
At the end, he got hurt, and that was kind of the end.
And that
but
Orlando trade really broke him.
Yes.
That trade to Orlando really got to him.
Yeah, so he's a guy that I always think of, like, it might not be wasted, right? He still made 3 All-Star teams.
Yeah, but he would have been a Hall of Famer if that trajectory, you're probably Team USA, Hall of more All-Stars, resume built Hall of Fame conversation that we're talking about.
And look, I know he had a really rough childhood. I think that's probably part of it. I think there's stories out there about him just being, he's in like a defensive mode all the time, right? Instead of accepting coaching and being embraced by people. I think when he was pushed by coaches and people around him, it seems like he reacted negatively. And some of that I don't blame him for, but it's a shame because loved watching him. Really exciting player and just never really got there.
Good one here from Malcolm Carrington. Does Blake Griffin count?
Oh, I think he falls more in the health one.
Yeah, the health
category.
Sure.
All the
he does.
The
in terms of
injuries.
expectations, I think he mostly met them early in his career.
Yep.
He was the 2 pick?
He was
he
number
1?
He
He was 1?
He was number 1. Yep, he was number 1 overall. Final one, a super chat here from Davon, a.k.a. Schoolboy Beat, says, what would Keith Van Horn look like in today's NBA? He's certainly shooting threes.
Tall, soft.
Wait,
shooter.
by the way, we just skipped over Ben Simmons. Isn't
he
one
I
of
talked about him enough in my
Isn't
career.
he one of the great examples of like you just waste you're the next hybrid Magic LeBron or whatever people are saying, and then now
even Gene says Markelle Fultz because of we don't know because we never even got to see the best of him.
But in the wasted
Simmons,
talent category, I would put Ben in there for sure.
Yeah.
Another one I saw of Marvin Williams coming out of UNC. I thought he was going to just tear up the league.
So did I. Did you think he should have been taking over Chris Paul?
No, I didn't.
Heck no.
Yeah.
And I was a big UNC fan at that point. You taking him over Chris Paul was insane.
Yes, it was, man. Well, Keith Van Horn would take a lot of threes. A lot of threes, Davon.
I always look back at the
stretch 4.
The white guy shooters, big white shooters back in the day. Christian Laettner is another one in that same vein where he was not built for the way the NBA was set up at that point. But if he comes up now, I wonder how much different his career turns out. So him and Keith Van Horn, I put in kind of similar buckets, right? Because we see someone like a Kelly Olynyk has a long, productive career, they make a bunch of money. I think those types of guys that were more, let's say, skill or finesse bigs would have a lot better chance to succeed. And
I would put Van Horn more in the category with Markkanen because of the all-star potential than Olynyk, but he certainly would have fit right in, especially as a stretch 4 next to, let's say, like we talk about Embiid having that stretch 4 next to him that fits perfectly. He would have been a nice one.
That Shrimp would have been a real, like a guy who would have fit much better in today's NBA.
Yeah, some good ones. And we appreciate everybody. Brian Knight throwing Gordon Hayward after he had that tragic injury there with first game with the Boston Celtics.
Did we ever bring up Grant Hill, by the way?
He was on,
we definitely did before the show.
We didn't, I don't think we got into it. He's one of the great ones.
Just like we really didn't get into Penny, we knew that they are 1 and 2. Those two guys right there. Derrick Rose retiring after 16 seasons. Penny, Grant Hill, and then you go after it however you guys want to. Brandon Roy was very high on all of our lists because of how talented it was and would have been with his career.
Can I throw one more in there? This is going to sound insane. I think if you consider the fact that he could have been the greatest basketball player of all time, you could make an argument for Shaq after a certain point, right? That his motivation was so it came and went, and he was so good and so talented and so physically dominant that it didn't matter a lot of the time. But if Shaq had the same year-to-year motivation as he had, the year he was nearly unanimous MVP, if he had that his whole career, I think he wins probably at least a couple more titles, at least a couple more MVPs. And you're not just talking about, he was, one of the most dominant players ever. He might legitimately be the GOAT in the history of basketball. And so the fact that he still is in that like top 10 type conversation tells you how talented he was. I mean, young Shaq, watching him run the floor and just like throw dudes out of the way
Shaq, man. Blue
was
chips.
Crazy.
Yeah.
But I do think there's part of me that's like,
His
if
name
he could have
Neon?
taken better
Neon.
care of himself,
Yeah.
if he could have, I just wonder, you know, what his ceiling could have been.
Yep. Good stuff, everybody. That's always a fun conversation. We appreciate you guys hanging with us for an extra time here on the show. Now we got to get to the world famous roll call.
All right, everybody. Gave you some extra time today, so I don't know if we're getting extra shout outs, but we're going to work our way through the list. Thank you to everybody popping through here today. It seems like chat is going completely off the rails from what I can tell. So let's everyone treat each other nicely. Let's all try to remember we are a family. We are a community around here, and keep it civil. Thank you to my guy, Eugene Ross, the king of the caps lock.
What up, Gene?
In the building. My girl, Winona.
Hey, Nona.
Rick Morse in the building. Jonathan Chen said he thought I was going to say Joel Embiid. No, sir. Although
Derek brought him up.
We'll see when we look back through time what's going to happen with the rest of Joel's career. We got Eden the Remix. We got Bootzilla. We got Malcolm Carrington.
What up, Malk?
Well, I believe Malcolm said it was his friend's daughter. He named her at some point.
Yep.
In the show. Malcolm, I apologize for not remembering her name. We will circle back on her at some point. She will hopefully be on that future WNBA team.
Yes, she will.
In Philadelphia.
Represent her city.
We got the old Valerians in here. Is that a reference to Game of Thrones? Valerian Steel, I believe.
Non-WA supporter there.
We got Neil Deaver in the building.
What up, Neil?
Brian Knight, who came in late and said, can you guys restart the show and do it again?
Yes, you can.
Buddy, that's what the replay button or the podcast feed is for. You can catch us there anytime you want. Thank you for the super chats from Davon, a.k.a. Schoolboy Beats. And Bree, remind me who the other one was. JoJo's second mama coming in today. Excited about a potential WNBA team.
Soon
Thank
as you
you.
say JoJo, I start thinking of Bad Boys. Michael Imperioli. Is JoJo in there?
Thank you to Stuart Hill. Thank you to
Stu.
Only One Originals. Thank you to Seth F. Who else is in
Val
today?
And Jess.
The Bull RJ, who said, I made it back for training camp. Thank you, RJ, for coming
good
through.
To see you. Good
We're
to be
loading
back.
up, buddy. Wes Wolf Media instead of Westwood. Thank you, Wes Wolf. Thank you, everybody who's here. Scott G, also with us today.
JoJo Dancer. Look at Boots in there.
Jess is in here once again.
Jess.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you to everybody who's here. If you have not already, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you get notifications each and every time we go live. If you hit the thumbs up button, we'll be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. And it'll be a nice thank you to super producer Bree for holding it down as always. Thank you, guys.
See ya.
We all silly like the mayor.